welcome to another episode of What's Going On with Shaun, a variety podcast grounded in marketing, but with an appetite for quality conversations about things that make life worth living. Time is precious. So thanks for tuning in today as we find out what's going on with
Rae Selvey. How are you, Rae?
I'm good, Shaun. Thanks for having me.
Oh boy, this is going to be a great episode. I give me a minute here just to say to the audience, Rae has an amazing background in automotive. We've known each other for a long time, and her experience is deep in both sales and marketing within the industry. From an e-commerce manager, director of sales, general manager, Rae has deep experience from end to end in retail automotive. But that is really kind of just a little piece of her story, because her experience and her mark has been made with service providers like Reynolds and Reynolds, which is where we have a little intersection, although you were there before me, but I got there as soon as I could. Not just Reynolds, Edmunds, Fuse Autotech, well over a decade. It's probably longer even than that, Rae, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but a true diamond among all the coal. I say that a lot in our industry. The diamonds are easy to spot. There's not enough of them. Rae is absolutely one of them, a supreme example of somebody who's very well-rounded on both the sales and marketing side of the house. I always learn from your experience, your demeanor and your candor and the way that you treat other people. You're also a super fantastic human, and I'm glad that you're my friend. So Rae, welcome to What's Going On with Shaun. Thank you for being here.
So happy to be here. And by the way, who is this Rae person? I want to talk to her. She sounds fun.
You had no idea that you are so impressive.
Right. I was like, gosh, that makes me sound awesome.
That's
I'm
one of the
so
best
excited
things
to
about
talk to you.
Yeah.
Any chance to talk to you is amazing. I love it. And we should have done this a long time ago, probably.
We should have. And humility, of course, is always one of your characteristics. Of course, you deserve all of those accolades and then some. I'm a huge fan of people with deep experience, no matter what industry or what they do. I think it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest differentiator in a lot of scenarios. And you just bring so much of that to the table that I love that. For the audience, don't forget, check out Rae easily on LinkedIn. You can go and connect with her on her profile over there. You definitely want to know her. She needs to be in your network. She needs to be part of your people. If you don't know her, the wealth of experience will be a benefit to you for sure. And so let's do this. Let's talk a little about your, maybe a lot about your career journey. I'm interested, and every time I do What's Going On with Shaun, I'm usually asking people a lot about like their life and what they're doing in their careers, and especially my automotive friends. So I want to know from you, like, what was that early career experience like? And was there a particular inspiration? A lot of people talk about they just fell into the car business. It was not something they went into. I'm curious to know, what was that for you? Were you inspired, or how did that happen?
I was young. I was 19, needed a job. I had also coincidentally wrecked my car. So I was absolutely in love with cars. I mean, my dad and I used to play a game, driving down the street. I could see a car way in the distance and tell you exactly what it was, the trim level usually. And so it was a road trip game we would play. But I saw an ad for a sales job, and I thought, oh my God, I love cars. They give you a car. I could do this till I figure out what I want to do. And so I went and applied, and it was in Dallas. And it was with the John Eagle. At the time, his dad, Bob, was still running it, but it was the Eagle dealerships. Yeah. And it was very funny, because I spent about 3 hours arguing with them about why I shouldn't answer phones and be a receptionist, and why I should let me sell cars. And they were like, honey, why don't you try answer the phones? If you're really sharp, you do well, maybe we'll move you into sales. I'm like, I'm not answering phones, I can do this. It can't be that hard. And they kept looking at me like I was insulting them or something. And so anyhow, long story short, 3 hours later, finally in frustration, my boss, the guy that ended up being my boss, just said, look, show up Wednesday, 8 a.m. We'll take it from there. And he thought he was going to run me off by the end of the first week, he said. But that's how I got into it. And immediately, I mean, they had never hired a woman in sales in like 30 years of business. So immediately, I just kind of took off. I mean, I remember, how they trained me to sell cars, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. And they were like, oh, yes, you will. And I was like, okay. But, I tried to do it my way. and that immediately started resonating after I got yelled at a lot with. And
Around what year was that?
It was 1989.
Wow.
Yeah, I just dated myself, didn't I? Yes.
No. Just to be sure, you're so in a lot of ways, and this is one of the things that I think that you and I have kinship over is, in the covered wagons as pioneers and some of this stuff that
Yeah.
happened, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so when you drop the whole, it's like I don't want you to bury that lead that you were among a very small number of people. Maybe, who knows? Maybe you were one of the first, if not the first woman to kind of pioneer your way into those sales roles on the retail side. Because in 1989, I don't think I had ever been in a dealership where like, hey, there are women selling. And,
Yeah.
fast forward to 2024, and, there are several organizations that are all about the empowerment and inclusion of women in this industry. And here you are like, man, I brought my whole covered wagon all the way across.
It's
And
great to see it, I gotta say. I mean, and I've always tried to be a champion of women in the industry. And I'll be honest with you, it was not easy. I mean, first of all, there's no HR back then. I mean, and
yeah,
the stories, right? But the work was hard. I mean, in Dallas, first of all, it's hot, as you know, you live there. I mean, it's so hot, and you're wearing, and then we had to wear like full, professional business attire. And you're just sweating like a, what, on the lot, just standing out there waiting for a customer to drive in, and ruining shoes, ruining clothes, tearing your pants or whatever, your jacket. I mean, everything. It was awful. So it wasn't very appealing to a lot of women, but it didn't bother me. So, I think it was really hard to get women to want to do that. And then the schedules were pretty rough too. But I remember my boss saying to me very, very early on, I was like, oh, I get a weekend day off, because in Texas, you had to be closed. You may still, with the blue laws, 1 day a weekend, and then you get one floating day off during the week. And I was like, oh, I'm going to take my day off. And my boss was like, you're going to do what? And I was like, yeah, I got to go see my grandmother. I got stuff to do. And he's like, Selvey, when you're not here, you're unemployed. And I was like, oh, okay. And so really, we got 1 day off a week, basically, because he encouraged you to work on your day off,
Yeah.
So that schedule was not appealing to a lot of people, much less a lot of, women that were sane and unlike me.
Old school retail. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah.
There's still some of that out there. I know there's a lot of people in our industry that always want to paint these pictures of like, we've completely revitalized ourselves. We've gone through our own reformation movement in automotive, and some have, but it's not all. So
no, we've come so far though. And I think it is an industry now that's appealing to women. And I advocate for that. I think it's great. And I think there's so many more opportunities available in this industry, aside from just being in the dealership. Right. And there's, groups and corporate level roles that I think are more appealing too. And I just think it's really great to see diversity of any kind now. That wasn't the case where I started, in Texas, at least,
For sure. Were there moments or mentors or both that you could point to that were really influential? Because obviously, starting in sales in 1989 in such a male dominated industry, I think it's clear to anybody that you must have countless stories about things that were like, this is not likable. But in the process, what about moments and mentors that were like, anybody helping you or championing? Or
there were, being a young girl among a bunch of men, there were people that sort of took me under their wing and said, hey, just stick with me, kid. I'll keep you, keep you safe. And so I appreciated that. And it was needed at times, trust me. But I'd say that there were two people that stand out to me early in my career. And one was Bob Eagle, John Eagle's dad. He was such a kind man. He used to call me his little moneymaker. It was really funny. And he'd just be like, hey, what can I do for you? What do you need from me? What do you need from me? And I was like, that meant a lot. And what it taught me was that, you figure out what struggles your people are having, and you help overcome those for them, or move them out of the way, whatever it was. And I think that really meant a lot to me and taught me a lot. I remember he would bring me, we used to have these auctions, that in-house auctions, right, on Fridays. And he would always make a sandwich from the barbecue stuff that was left over and bring it over to me. And the guys would get so mad because they weren't allowed to go over there. Now, I didn't, call it special treatment, whatever, but there was plenty of treatment that didn't, advocate for me either. But it was really sweet that he would do that. I really appreciated that. So I'd get my barbecue sandwich on Fridays every time from him.
I love that. I love that. I
There was
did some
also
work
another
for
manager. What's
the
that?
John. I did some work for the John Eagle stores way back since I've been in Texas. It's been a long time, but I worked more
Yeah.
with John's brother Darren,
Oh,
who
Darren was great.
he
He was
he
so
he was like
different
my
from
favorite
Shaun.
guy. He's the first guy I ever knew that had like a standing desk that he made himself, and just all
Way
the
back,
sound effects he would do, and he just would he we needed more people like him in the industry. He was just a
I
fun guy.
really liked him. We connected a lot. And you know what's funny is here's John and here's Darren. I mean, night and day from each other.
Yeah.
I really struggled to believe they were brothers initially, right? And
Yes.
it was clear that John was going to rise to the leader of the auto group. But Darren had such interesting insights, I thought, and really he just brought such an authentic personality to everything. And he was really
Yeah.
present a lot. I mean, he was really young then, but really present. And I really enjoyed working with him.
Yeah. The kind of the black and white boundaries that most of us see the industry in, he's kind of like, nope, it's gray, right? More
Yeah.
contrarian, more like, no,
Yeah.
question everything. Yeah, I was found that refreshing about him. So from retail, were there things that happened in that part of your journey that were like more of the like achievements that you felt like this is really starting to shape the professional side of your journey? Like, and then I guess maybe then when did you start to transition from, that sales role into other, because you've done so many things within
Yeah.
the retail under the roof of a dealership? When did some of that start to open up and change and you started to see with maybe bigger eyes?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was really green and young. I mean, I remember asking my boss one time, like, why do all the guys disappear when a policeman drives up on the lot? I mean, and he was like, "You're funny," and now I know why. But anyhow, it was just those days were crazy. And so I didn't spend a ton of time, didn't have an interest in spending a ton of time just standing around talking, or, I certainly wasn't a smoker, so I wasn't out smoking out front by the front door, with everybody. I wanted something to do always. And so I was the only one that would take the special 5 faxes that would come in. Remember those? And everybody would be like, "I'm not interested." And I understood, like, first of all, it's just something to do. Second of all, it was something that I had empathy for those folks. And I understood that if you just treat them with transparency and, treat them the way you would want to be treated and help them understand why they're in the situation they're in, they're being told no everywhere, being at that time like ghosted, nobody would call back. And help them just really literally break it down for them. Here's why you're in this situation. Here's what you have to do to get out of it. I know you want to buy this car, but you can't. Here's the car that you can buy, and here's how long it's going to take you to get out of it if you do these steps, right? And I started like building this business from these things and having great success with them. And as you know, those were very profitable deals back in the day.
Yeah.
So that was really kind of, I think, my first foray out of just the general sales. And I had a great leader. His name was Luther Hensley. He was such a great mentor to me. He was just this scraggly little fella who had like one hair that would just float around on the top of his head. And he was just this beloved guy. And he was a crack up, but he was really hard. I mean, hard. He would scream, "Rae Selvey, come to the sales office," over the PA all the time. And everybody like, "Your dad's calling you," and I would just go march in there and he'd be like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "I was with a customer, for goodness sakes," but wanted to know what I was doing at all times, hold me to really high standards and drove me crazy. But as I got to be a leader in my own right, I remember I would think, "God, I sound like Luther," not to the way that he would do it, but like I would just be like, "Oh my gosh, I owe him so much," in showing me kind of how there's a personal accountability that you have to have, right? In any role, but in a sales role and in a dealership. And you have to follow steps. And it doesn't mean that there's not gray like we're talking about, but you have to follow steps and build a concrete process. And so through him, in a really strange way, I learned a lot about like being really rigid on the process and making sure that it's followed and building your business that way. And I've often, he's no longer with us, but I often thought back on it and, would call him and just go, "Gosh, it drives me crazy to say this, but I thank you. I learned so much from you."
You mentioned the magic word that we still need more of in our industry, and it's accountability. And you had somebody early on that
Yeah.
was modeling that. Um, so many people don't even ever get a good mentor or a good example of somebody who has learned that, the accountability side.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's great. I mean, it's interesting. So I'm curious to know all these years that have gone by since the beginning of that part of your career, and then today, when you look at sales, marketing too, on the retail side, what do you think are some of the biggest things that have changed from back then to kind of where we
Hmm.
are now?
Well, I mean, I think obviously technology, right? I would kill for some of the technology today who have had it back then. I mean, we were managing our business on note cards, that we would just wear out till they would fray all over,
You
But
mean there was a time when we didn't have CRMs?
oh my God, no. I remember how excited I got when we got this first CRM and we used a free one. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was one that you could get for free. And I loved it because it was something that wasn't a note card, and there was follow-up in there and all this stuff. It was great. But um, I think technology is one, but also, I think to me, it's been very apparent from literally the day I started selling cars that you can do this in a positive. It doesn't have to be a horrible experience for anybody, for the
Mm.
customer or for the person who's selling the car, anybody involved in that process. And when you stay focused on that and build that into everything that you do, like that's been a consistent all the way through. Um, and then really now having the technology and the usage of data to really just work smart and not hard anymore. You can
Mhm.
target so many things and really just dial your business. And I think regardless, be it in a dealership or in, a B2B vendor role or whatnot. And I think that's very exciting to see that and to really see those things make a difference, I think has been fun. Going back to the special faxes that came in,
Mhm.
that was, I think, for me, the reason when the internet came about, when you and I sort of crossed paths at CarPoint back in the day,
Mhm.
that that was something that just clicked immediately for me because I had already been doing it through this fax process with special finance, right? I knew there was a way to deal with these customers specifically. I knew their expectations, and I knew that you had to sort of set the stage correctly for that. So when the internet came about, I was like, oh my God, this is it. I get it. It just dawned. I mean, a light bulb went off and I ran with it. And I thought, at the time that was such a fun introduction into our industry, right? And it kind of matched what I had wanted to do, which was sell the car the way the customer wants to buy it, and
Mhm.
process-wise, right? And I think one of the things that uh, I didn't crystallize it at the time, but I knew that if I was ever given the chance to take control of the processes in a dealership, that I wanted to do it that way and to build it in a way. I had a vision kind of on how I would do that. And when given the opportunity, here in Portland it was part of Asbury at the time, but it was Thomas Sonato Group.
Mhm.
Um, I had, we had 17 stores and I had internet departments in all of them, and they were all flailing because they weren't being supported by the in-store management. And so when they asked me what it was going to take for us to hit 200 cars a month, I said, well, I'll tell you right now, it's going to be consolidation. And they were like, great, what do you want? Let's go look at this building down the road. And it was a used car building on the Nissan lot. And I was like, we walked through it. And this is how little I was expecting from them. They're like, what do you think? And I'm like, this is a dump. I'm not going to work in this crap environment. And they're like, no, we're going to remodel it. And I'm like, seriously? And they're like, yeah, we'll get probably 200 grand budget. And I'm like, I'll take it. And then I just was like, we're doing it the way I want to do it though. And they're like, yeah, have at it. Sweet. I mean, I remember a big fight to get Reynolds at every workstation, right? For my 20 salespeople. I mean, a huge fight for that. 2 sales managers I wanted, 2 finance managers. They gave me that though. And we outsold 4 of our franchise stores. I mean, it was the very first internet store. It was 2001 when we opened it,
Wow.
late 2001, and ran it successfully. I mean, well over, 300 grand a month in gross, and just highly efficient, highly successful. I mean, stores come down and see why we had an appointment board that was floor to ceiling every weekend, and they had maybe 10 appointments for the day. And
Yeah.
it was just all process driven, and everyone loved being there, and they were helping each other. There was no like, well, I talked to your customer, so I get half that deal. It wasn't like that. It was very supportive, and everybody was working together and cross-selling all the brands. And it was just, when I look back, that was one of the things that I enjoyed most. And I think I probably went off from your question, but
That's good.
it was fun. So then also when I got promoted to a GM of a store, I kind of brought some of the same principles, right? And really allowed the customer process to be the focus, and just obsessed with the customer process. And I think that's what allowed our success there as well. But
I am such a fan of people like you that get the consumer, right?
yeah,
In B2B marketing, I'm always, especially nowadays with my little business that I run now, I'm always talking to people about the business to business side of marketing, and that business where you sell a product or service to the dealer, like to businesses, and businesses with the end user. I still think about the ideal customers that I want to talk to and that other businesses are wanting to talk to. You just described what I love so much about people like you in automotive, that get what the consumer who's shopping for and wanting to buy a car, they've never wanted. The whole concept of people wanting to, I'm going to buy a car online. What eBay brought to everybody, what Cars Direct was trying to bring to everybody, of like, I
yeah,
don't want to deal with the dealership. All the way up until, okay, let's have a gold rush of digital retailing tools,
yeah,
leading up into COVID. And then every dealership pretty much buys one. And then we're like, oh man, most of them are garbage. And most of that is because they still were critically missing the fact that the consumer doesn't want you around until they tell you that they need you, right, to finish or to
yeah,
answer the more deeper level questions.
yeah,
Now, that isn't every single car buyer, but oftentimes, people that are in charge of how's the process going to be built and how are we going to execute it, they
yeah,
just always miss out on that. They still maybe come from that older school. In our industry, it used to be, well, we can control everything about the product, the price
you
of the
hold it all.
product.
You hold it
You
all.
have to come to, right? You have to come to us to even see it. You want to
Yeah,
drive it. It's an expensive thing. And because of the control, oftentimes that meant, well, the process is going to be horrible for the consumer. And what you were just, you could tell how excited and how much you loved that, is you were given
yeah.
the open book to say, let's do it one way. And you clearly had these awesome results. Do you have any thoughts on, like, why are we now in 2024 and there are still,
Yeah.
like, not hundreds, thousands of dealerships that still don't 100% get that or execute it? Do you think it's part of I'm just why do you think that is?
I'll be honest with you. And I used to laugh and say, well, that just gives me job security, right? But it's honestly, I still don't get it. I don't get it. Now, on the other side of that, they're the dealerships that are getting purchased by the consolidators or the other larger groups that do get it, right? Because there's no room for that in the marketplace anymore. And I think COVID did help accelerate that. But going back to what you said a minute ago, customers don't want to avoid the dealership. They want to avoid the BS. I think we've seen that time and time again in this whole evolution of purchasing a car. I mean, there are some people that simply do want to do it purely online, never step in. And we had that in 2001. We had folks that would call us, work with us online. We'd do all the documents. We'd put them on the phone with F&I ahead of time and let them go through their interview and try to sell stuff. And then we'd FedEx paperwork and ship the car. That's fine. It's just a tiny number of people that wanted to do that. What they really wanted was for you to tell them that you were going to meet them where they wanted to be. You were going to give them the information up front. You were going to be transparent. You were going to make this easy. And then they were excited to come in and pick up the car where you were and have a pleasant experience. That's all they're looking for. And it's unbelievable to me after all of these years how many leaders in dealerships and retail automotive don't really still get that or lead with that, right? And there are some that do get it, but they're not really paying attention to what's happening in their stores, which is still the disconnect. But we don't. I'm a strong advocate for the tools that are there today I mean, look at my time at Fuse, right? I went there because I was like, God, this technology can fulfill everything that I've wanted to see happen, right? If used properly and complete. But the online process, you have to give customers the tools to figure out what they want to purchase and is it going to fit what their budget is or what their needs are online, and get an idea of it. Then send that in and have it be seamless and they just pick up where they left off in store. And then if you do that and you meet their expectations, they will come in and pick up the car, assuming it's, you're not dropping the ball left and right. But I think what many dealerships are doing coming out of COVID particularly, it became hey, here's what we've got, take it or leave it. Because if you don't, somebody else will. And I've got people lined up. So that fog hasn't cleared, I'm finding, in this time that COVID has disappeared, where, so many dealerships are still ignoring the DR leads that come in, which are really deals. And the smarter these deals are getting and the more, credit pre-approval and, identity verification that's happening on these things now. And some of the companies out there that are really hand delivering you what could be an absolutely complete deal. All you got to do is pick up the baton and finish it. And yet you drop the baton, and it just baffles me how that's happening. But I still, to answer your question, I don't get why so many today, but they're not going to be around, I don't think. And I hate to say that because no one's a bigger advocate for retail automotive dealerships than me. I mean, there are a lot of us out there, but I love a dealership and I love going in one and quickly, like you can assess, you've been in enough to do it too. You walk in and you very quickly know, is this a well-run ship or not? And where the faults are and where they aren't and what's going on. I mean, I sat in a dealership not long ago and just looked around and I was like, you're just looking all over, identifying all these things. And it's fun to me. And it's so fun to get the opportunity to talk about very simple fixes for those things too. But it falls on deaf ears sometimes still. And it's just baffling.
Yeah. I don't know who should be credited for it, but somebody at some time said, no one likes to be sold, but everyone likes to buy.
They do, yeah.
And it feels like that statement alone is a pretty great guiding principle that maybe should be said to your entire dealership, especially your customer-facing salespeople.
Yeah.
Anybody that's really having anything to do with the customer experience, is to remind them no one wants to be sold, not including the people that are being told you don't want to be sold yourself. But boy, isn't it great when you buy something, and then when you just help somebody buy. It might mean step 1 through 6, I don't even need to be here, right? Like I don't need to be around. All the information's out there. It isn't 19. I used to tell people this example all the time. The Ford Bronco wasn't redesigned just in 2020 or whatever it was. It was redesigned in 1978 as well. It went away in the 70s from the box style Bronco, which now it looks like again. And that 1978 Bronco, my dad fell in love with. Well, what was the experience like in 1978 to see it? Television ad. Okay, well, I want more information about it. Okay, well, I got to go physically into a dealership to get a printed brochure, which were really nice, thicker stock paper, looking at all these pictures. That's the experience that happened in the Raines household when I'm just a whippersnapper and my dad's in love with this vehicle. He's getting all this information, but how he had to get the information, right? It was the TV ad that made him like, oh, wow, okay, cool, I'm interested. But if I want more information, I got to go to the dealership and get that. He got that information, keeps on doing his research, and then makes a purchase decision. But it was forced. That was the only way that experience could happen. Today, well, and it's been this way pretty much since the internet grew up, and maybe not in 2001 when it took 4 days to upload one large image because no one knew how to compress its file size. Right.
Yeah.
But today, certainly in the last, call it 15 years at least, it's not that. You can find everything you want, and we have put that on steroids to the point where we should be able to tell people all the time, just remember, these people don't want you to sell them anything. They want you to help them buy this thing that they probably are already very interested in and they might be in love with. So you mentioned a little bit about some of the technologies. Curious to know if you have thoughts on how dealers should be leveraging some of the new things. And when I say new, that might be something that's been available for the last 5 years. Because to
Yeah.
me, there are technologies. It happens in every industry, but I always say for dealers, I feel bad for them because it's been on such a rapid trajectory for so long, really since the internet and a little bit before it, that dealers cannot keep up with it as fast as it starts to pour onto them. So with that, are there technologies, whether they were just unveiled this year or within the last few years, that you think, man, every dealer should be using some of these things to kind of get ahead, maybe to provide the right experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just touched on one to me that I think is critically important. Which one you choose is we can't get into that, probably it'll be a long conversation, but having the ability to not just have a calculator that's, fake, what I call calculations on how to purchase a car, what you're going to pay for a car, having a true, genuine, like, tool that helps the customer. Let me back it up. Deciphering the different trim levels these days and the different features on vehicles and whether the vehicle you're looking at truly has the features that you're looking for can be really difficult. I mean, so having a website and an online business that really helps the customer be able to quickly figure out, I think I want this, which trim level is going to give me those features that I know I want. I mean, and be able really to understand and differentiate that. And I know the philosophy was always, oh, well, let's just give them enough. And then that way they have to call the dealership to help get clarity. It's a bad plan. That's just a bad plan. It's outdated, right? But navigation and I like the ability to serve content up to the customer so they don't have to go digging for it. Because today they're not going to dig for long, right? So if you're not working with a system that allows you to push to them what you're able to identify that they want or are looking for, you're going to be at the back of the bus or whatever already. Like, so you're starting in a I'd say a negative. But from there, then, having everything flow well. And I mean, I'm not saying websites are where everything starts and stops, but that's where, when all of the marketing efforts come together, a customer's looking at you first there. They're not coming to your store. So having that be as important as you would make your showroom, literally without clunk, without clutter, get that straightened out, because there are still so many websites you go to, and God forbid you go to a mobile website, right? And try to look at, vehicle inventory or anything specific there. And there's just all this stuff that you can't sort through. And the attention span today, or the willingness to do that, is nil. So have a very clean, like, online presence that focuses on trying to serve up the content that you can identify the customer's looking for. And there are a lot of availability for that sort of resource. Then from there, having key tools on there that will help you, like a digital retailing tool, like we talked about a minute ago. I do believe that's important. That's going to get the customer down the path of going, and I'm not talking about one that's just a lead generator, that you're wasting your time there. And you're losing customers, but having one that genuinely helps them build what they think they're looking for, and then can seamlessly get in touch with you to finish that process and get accurate information, through that process on what it's going to cost them to own that car. And then that gives you, once they've done that, the opportunity to be the consultant that, you need to be. But I feel like today, so many customers are consuming so much information about all of the vehicles. And I'll tell you, when I started selling cars, it was really easy. There were only a couple of luxury lines, like two domestic and, two import. And then, a couple of other, things available import wise, and certain classes of cars. And that was it. Now there are, every manufacturer's in every segment, and they have sometimes two vehicles in every segment. It's crazy, the variety that's out there. So I see the salespeople and the dealership's role is really trying to help the customers navigate through all this. So really, it's no longer hi, welcome to. It's, hey, what are you trying to do? What are you looking for? How can I help you figure that out? and do it quickly and accurately for your needs, and then move into some transparent conversations about what it's going to take to purchase that.
I love that you mentioned how important it is to make sure that your website is set up for you to win, right?
Yeah.
It I'm baffled by it as well because so much money is spent to get one person to that website, right?
Yeah. A ton.
Yeah. And
Um,
so then once you get there, and for the most part, we really, I think, let all of the website providers kind of slide with how abysmal conversion rates have been on automotive
yeah.
website providers forever. And they never really talk about it, but a lot of them have and continue to do things to try to improve conversion rates. At least I think they do. But that, you know, 2% ish or sub 2% number has been pretty much the same since,
Forever.
I mean, I think it was Traver was doing sites just before Cobalt, or Cobalt bought them. And, most people that like you and I that have been in it forever would say, well, Cobalt was kind of the first, substantial website provider. So, okay, fair enough. But I just can't remember for sure if it was Traver Technologies, but I think it was. That said, from that era all the way to today, there's just, what are we doing with the website piece? But
Yeah.
I love that you shared all that you did, because the reality is a lot of dealers should think that the website is the environment where you can't afford not to win, right? And maybe winning, part of that is better conversion optimization. But to your point, it very much includes, well, you better know what tools you should have on there so that you can provide that experience that allows somebody to go way down the journey path, or the path,
Yeah.
without you, and then the right moments where they pull up. Because I say this all the time to people when I'm talking about digital retailing. There are components within a well-built tool like that might actually be the starting point for somebody. For example, I've got a car I think I want to trade in. And so somebody might start with, oh, what's that like? And if they started some over here trying to get a trade evaluation, are you properly then saying, hey, you can stay in this, I'll buy it. We're not in it at all. You just keep on going now that you've got this information about your trade and what
Yeah.
we would be willing to give you for it. And now that what is associated to what? Well, maybe financing, or I want to lease this thing, all the things that you're trying to present to somebody, but it's still so messy. It's
It
just,
is.
I,
It's disjointed in
yeah.
so many ways. And I think what is I tell dealers all the time that when I talk to them, go through this experience yourself, really, because there are way more turnoffs in your most important storefront than there are turn-ons, really. And use it from a customer's perspective, and really see if this thing that you want to add adds any benefit, because I can promise you most of it doesn't. And I'm not talking about like cutting vendor options out, because I'm on the vendor side most often in
Yeah.
this recent part of my career, in the last 15 years or so. There are important pieces that need to be built into a website, but some of it, or some of the pieces that they have that go along with the offering, can be more of an annoyance and a deterrent than anything. So you really have to scrutinize anything that you're putting, capabilities to do on your website, and make sure that it's flowing well. Like I'm talking about that internet store that we had with Thomason back in the day.
Mm.
Back then in 2001, we were getting, it was like well over, and this was 2001, mind you. So you're going to laugh at the number now, but we were so excited about, over 10,000 uniques monthly back then, right? It was huge.
Yeah.
And we had a 10% conversion rate on the website back then. And people would come, like I remember it was a dealer.com website back in the early days for them. And I remember our rep was there all the time. They would bring people in and they were interviewing us. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Well, you make the path as clear and concise as possible for the customer to get the answers that they're looking for. It's really simple, transparent. I'm not trying to simplify it and like make it seem like you're an idiot if you don't do that, but it's true. You have to think about, if you're on this site and you're navigating to get to where you want to get, what do you want on that path? And what do you need easily accessible to you? So I remember when I told my dealer we were going to put pricing online. I mean, first of all, I had to go through a fight to get us to be able to give it out on the phone and then emails, right? But I won that battle. And then it was, we're going to put it online because I know they want it. And it was like, oh, no, you're not. And I'm like, we will. Yes, we will. So we had dealer.com build that functionality for us back, I think it was 2002 when we built that. And then we turned it on with a lead capture, obviously. Like if you want the actual today's, like the selling price, not just the MSRP, but the selling price, click here. We're going to give this to you, and then you just give us your info, and then you get a real price that you could bring in and purchase the car for. And I remember the GMs of the store were not happy with that. But at the end of the day, we were selling. I mean, I remember, not to keep dating myself, but we had a GM of the Honda store who is a very dear friend of mine. I loved him. He's no longer with us, but he came over and he was like, you know what? I got to take these Odysseys away from you. My team is very upset. And I was like, what do you mean take the Odysseys away from my team? And he's like, well, you guys are selling too many of them. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, the assumption was the internet is giving cars away, right? So I was like, okay, Kenny, well, come back tomorrow. I'm going to run some reports and we'll sit down and we'll go through this. So he came back the next day and we went through this report. I was so excited to pull it out. It showed that the internet was not only selling them faster, but more profitably than his floor sales team and his fleet team. So guess what came out of that? What came out of that was him taking them completely away from his fleet sales department. They got to sell none. And then we got allocated 80% of the incoming inventory. And I was like, there you go. Thank you. And so what we were doing, it proved was working, right? And that we weren't compromising our profitability or anything like that. And but it was all just an assumption or misconception. I mean, we all remember when it was just a fad there for a while, right? But
you hit on like 3 buried leads. I cannot let this go without recalling 3 things that you said in there, which are, and by the way, never, well, you can if you want to, because you're just a nice person, but apologize for, I'm aging myself or whatever. We have so many, I won't name any names. I'll just say our industry is so full of all these newer people that are addicted to looking at themselves in the mirror and attention. And they're absolutely like teethless tigers. They're like, oh, I'm awesome. Look at me, whatever. And I don't want people to think that I've turned into a grouchy old man, although maybe a little bit, but you're the perfect example of somebody who has actually been there, done that, and still doing it from a perspective that all these newer people that come in that really don't have any respect for the pioneers that already, like, we've already been there. We've already been talking about this for 20 years. Thanks for showing up. And the reason why that's important is you just talked about these 3 things. One, you meant not in any particular order, but here's the actual sale price. This is what you can buy it for, and actually disclosing that to customers. Customers, even though we don't like it on the retail side, I love it actually, but I get it. GMs and sales managers, GSMs and stuff, they're like, I don't like that. And I know why they don't like that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that can't work. Customers love it though. So if you're really always wanting to provide a great customer experience, that's what you were doing. And oh, by the way, that's one of the things that people love the most about Tesla. The price is the price.
Here's what it is,
right? Yeah. So you were way ahead of your time on that point. You also were way ahead of your time, and maybe even you helped dealer.com, which a word they used for a long time was seamless. They used to talk about their websites as seamless. What you were educating them on in terms of what are you doing here? You were showing them this is the seamless experience that customers love. That's why we're kicking so much ass.
Yeah.
And then the other thing you mentioned without mentioning the word is you were providing something that everyone likes to talk about and has for the last handful of years is we need to take all the friction out of the process, right? This frictionless experience. And so what you were talking about doing before maybe anybody else was really doing was a seamless process, was removing all the friction. And you were doing it because you knew that that's what customers wanted. And you proved it because you guys sold so many, use the Odyssey example, that it's making the other departments like, you need to give us some of those. And then you're like, hold on, just, you know what? Let's just have a little coffee break and come back and talk about this tomorrow when I can show you all these reports that we're annihilating all of this. And if we really want to run smoothly, high profit, moving our vehicles, instead of letting them sit around too long, it doesn't matter. We're not going to give any one department credit over the other. We're going to actually give the department that's actually moving these vehicles profitably the way we want. And you guys were providing probably a better customer experience than that traditional experience. Boom. Like, oh my God. Oh, that is so amazing. Hopefully you're like, yeah, that was, because that's incredible. That's
It was fun. I'll tell you that much. It's one of the things I'm proud of was that I do feel like we pioneered a lot of things there. And, you and I going back to CarPoint for sure, that was pioneering, sending out discs so they could download their leads, dial up and download their leads. I mean, I still laugh about that's what we had to do, like walking them through how to dial up and download leads.
The way that we had to even get access to inventory data back then. Oh my goodness. Was Dale Benier, was he there in the data team when you were still there? I can't remember if the same people were there, but
I remember
Dale and Karshi were the two data guys when I was in that office.
It was really fun. I remember going to work for AutoNation. I want to come back to something here in a minute, but going to work for AutoNation early on. I mean, when they were taking their stores online, and that's when I left Reynolds, was to go work for them, right? Because I got solely responsible for that account. I was like traveling around trying to set up internet departments in their stores. I was like, you need people in the districts to do this. So they ended up hiring them and offering me the role initially, but in Texas, I took it. But we had, they had ADP and Reynolds and Reynolds people on site in Florida, right, at the AutoNation headquarters, and they would do whatever they wanted. I mean, they were customizing everything for them. But Bob Brockman's old company before he bought Reynolds, I can't remember the name of it now, but tried to block it out. It was such a difficult company to work with. But I had several stores in North Texas so it was called the Bankston Auto Group, and they were using those systems. So, AutoNation would have typically been like, hey, I'm going to buy out all these contracts, dump this system on the front porch, and somebody can come get it, and I'm putting in what I want. But they were locked in. I mean, Bob Brockman's contracts are infamous in our industry, right?
Oh, yeah.
They were locked in. But we were trying to take our inventory and put it online, right? I'm having enough battle trying to educate the GMs and all of the people on why we're doing this and why they need to cooperate. But we had a company that was servicing us that wouldn't even let us access our own inventory and data, right? So corporate could get into any store and get everything they wanted all over the country. But in North Texas, we had these stores that we couldn't do this in. So we were unable to put our inventory online for those stores. But we also, they couldn't even, just something as simple as accounting, they couldn't run reports from corporate. So every night, each store had to download all the reporting that was needed and FedEx it to corporate every day. I mean, that was just so impractical. But today inventory is key, and it's everywhere, and you should have easy access to getting your inventory online. But going back to two things that we were talking about a minute ago that I forgot to sort of wrap up, and that was, the website is important. And there are so many things now available with AI that you can incorporate, where you can know so much about your customer with the data pools that we have, right? And then with AI, and you really can, if you work with the right companies, you're pushing the content that's related to this customer out there to them on your website, instead of just letting them hunt and peck for it. And if there's any advice I have for dealers, it's start exploring that, because those are the ones that are going to win in the in the customer race, right? Customers get to a website and it's immediately overwhelming to them. And they're coming in from goodness knows what, paid search ad or whatever directional they're coming in on. And when they hit getting to, is this car equipped with what the heck I want it to be equipped with? And what exactly is the difference between this car and this car, trim level or package wise or whatever. And then what's it going to take to purchase that car? The faster you can make that path for them, the better. And making decisions about things like marketing, for example. The first thing I do, at Edmunds, the first thing I taught my team to do was when a dealer's saying, we're going to cancel your service, it sucks. Okay, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But before we talk about that, let's go look at what your customer experience is on your website. We're dropping people in your website, or we're driving people to you. They're looking at your inventory and they can't figure out what's on this car at all. Whereas this dealership that's doing really well with us, you can sell very quickly and easily what's on this car, right? So the merchandising and the depth of data about the features and prioritizing the right features and not having, there's some silly things that we include. And, when you do a VIN explosion, you're just like, oh my God. And that's the first, second, third, fourth thing listed. Like, where's CarPlay? Where's, the heated seats? Where are those things? Oh, let's pull those up to the top of the list. And making sure that, again, quickly and easily a customer can go, oh, yeah, nope, this is the one. It's got what I'm looking for. and making the effort to do that. But don't throw, you know, marketing sources out or anything like that until you've figured out, you know, when that source drives something to your website, what's your website doing to turn that customer on or off?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not humming along very smoothly, figure that out before you go throwing things out, you know, with the bathwater, if you will.
Great advice. Really great advice. All marketing works. It's somehow,
Yeah, yeah,
but oftentimes how we define, well, how did it work? It doesn't
right.
always mean that
The
it,
expectations of it.
so
Yeah,
right. So
yeah,
what it does sometimes is informs you of like, this is not something we want to continue to do, or we don't want to do it this way. And so I think that's great encouragement and really good advice. I want to ask, before we completely get to the end of this, around team building, because you've spent a lot of time in
yeah,
your career, and I have a couple questions about relative to that. One, I'm curious to know what qualities you think are really essential for leaders, and we could call them in the automotive industry, but
yeah.
just in general, what do you think are the essential qualities of good leaders in our industry?
You know, I think, I mean, empowering is a big thing. I think the basis of what I try to do, right, is to empower a team. And that means that you have to, you know, you have to provide them strong communication and clear expectations, and you got to be adaptable, um, and supportive. And I know those may seem sort of simple or cliche, but when you're obsessed like with the customer experience, take that same obsession and apply it to the employee experience, right? And
Mm,
just be a really authentic leader with them. Um, where they know that you have their back and you're going to charge through and inspire them through whatever you're going through, right? I
mm,
mean, take example of like how some dealerships dealt with the CDK disaster that we just went through
mm.
versus some that just flew right through it. You know, what was the difference there? A lot of it was leadership, right?
Yeah.
And how those leaders were just like, we're going to make, you know, come on team, we've got this, and here's what we're going to do. Here's a process we've got figured out to get through it. Here's how we're going to pivot, you know,
Yeah.
and then rallying the team and leading them through it versus, you know, panicking and not communicating and not being adaptable and not being transparent either, you know. So I don't know. I mean, I don't have a really cool cliche like this is exactly what these need to be, you know, qualities for a leader today. But I do
Mhm.
believe that having a clear vision and then supporting the team to all get on board with and get to that vision is just really important.
Yeah. No, I like that. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. I'm just curious,
Yeah.
mainly because I love your depth of experience. I think it's a good thing to ask somebody like you because you're qualified. Um,
I think trust
um,
too. I mean, I can't forget that one, right? You
yeah,
have to build trust and then you have to maintain it because you do what you say you're going to do and always have their, you know, best interest at heart.
yeah, I love that. So as you look towards the future, um, what are things that you still want to accomplish? What are things that you still like,
Oof, yeah.
plans, things that, things that are like, maybe they're right in you're in the front row of activity, and maybe other things you're like, I still want to. What are your thoughts there? What does the future look like? What are some of the things you're still wanting to get done?
I think for me, I'm so intrigued by, you know, I mean, I remember you'll be able to remember Dadium, right? I remember back then. I mean, that was the first sort of foray into like usage of data in auto industry, and I was so geeking out on it back then. And
Yeah.
I'm so happy to see that there are all these data darlings now, you know, and everybody's like into data and looking at how to really use it and all that. And I'm like, oh my God, that's awesome. Thank you for that. We're here. And there's so much more we can do with that. Right. And so I'm really into that and how AI is transforming our business and really, I mean, I've had some exciting calls in the last 2 weeks with some folks that are creating some incredible things that are going to sort of turn our industry upside down, I think, in a positive way, though, as
Mhm.
far as the customer experience goes, or you know, the validity of the process, you know, that we're offering to a customer, if that makes any sense. But um, I just really want to find a home where I can feel good about what we're offering, but you know, solving real problems for dealers. I mean, that's something that I've always wanted to do, regardless of what, if it was selling advertising and managing teams that are selling advertising. You're not solving massive problems in the world, but I would always coach my teams and myself. I'd be like, okay, thanks for letting me in. Let's dig. Hey, this is great. This is what we got to offer, but let's look at this over here. I see you got this going on. I see you got that going on. You're having problems with your CRM. Let's see what we can do. I've used them all. Let's sit down and let's talk about what you're doing. I bet it's a quick fix or whatever it is, and leaving them better than you found them. And I say that all the time. I'm sure people get tired of hearing it, but it's true. It's just something that I have a great passion for is solving real problems for dealers and having a part in that, right? A part in, be it, building a team of people that are going to go out and offer these products. And if it's a client success part as well, where you're running a team that's also owning that relationship and enhancing that dealer's usage and making them, a best-in-class user of whatever your offering is. That is something that I just love and I'm passionate about, and I hope to be able to do again soon.
I have no doubt that will absolutely be the case. I did want to ask you before I do my closing remarks, is there anything else just in general that you kind of want to share? I have a few fun questions here at the end that are very quick answers, but you have the floor here before I close this down.
Gosh, you put me on the spot. I feel like it makes me feel, I don't know. I don't ever feel like I have some earth-shattering, thing to share with folks. But I think for me, there's so many people choosing to get into automotive for the first time instead of falling into it, right? And I think that excites me. Like, it excites me for the future of our industry. It excites me to see. I went to NADA Academy when no one really knew what it was, right? And it was really. I've just found out not long ago, I couldn't remember what class number I was in. I was in class 39, right? So again, dating myself, but it was so eye-opening to me. And it really, I feel like, cracked my brain open on so many things that I didn't know to look at or understand to really excel in this business, or to see how a dealership should excel. And when you're excelling at the dealership level in automotive, then if you're doing it right, your customers are excelling as well, if that makes sense, right? So you're building brand, you're building a lifetime value there with everybody that you touch, be it in fixed or variable. And I love seeing all of these people coming in and getting educated too, like professionally educated for this industry, which that was unheard of when we started. So I just say, keep it up and keep doing it and keep getting these fresh, bright minds in here. Because eventually I do believe that this industry is going to be obsessed with customer experience, right? Like Amazon, or Amazon's coming into it. I had the fortune of interviewing with them actually, and it didn't come together, but it was about, it was a biz dev role for, their new product. And I remember they asked me, what do you think it's going to take to sell this to dealers? And I'm like, you're not going to have to sell this to dealers. I'm sorry. They're like, that's what we think, but we're not sure. And I'm like, they're going to do it, right? But there are some key things that are going to need to happen for it to work well, because the whole goal is for the customer to end up at the dealership, which I commended them on that. But it's so great to see so many really investing in their people and becoming obsessed with their employee experience, and then investing in the customer experience. And when you're obsessed with those two things, you can't go wrong. You really can't. I mean, it brings it together and it makes it a place that people want to do business and they want to continue to do business. And I think it's really, I'm not trying to say that automotive isn't complex, but it really is that simple. I mean, if you really look at it at the fundamental level that way.
I love it. I used to have a lot of questions that, I don't know, I thought were fun, but people were like, don't ask me those questions that I'm not going to ask. I'm going to make them more simplified. And I'll give you an example of one. Okay, so you have to choose what animal on the merry-go-round you are and what song plays when your merry-go-round goes around.
Oh my God.
I used to ask people that when I was hiring for creative jobs to see if they could even answer it and how fast they would. But you don't have to answer that question. I'll give you some easier ones as we close out the episode. What's your favorite color?
I don't know. I think I gravitate to green for sure. I don't know what it is. I love that color. I always have. Yeah.
Great choice.
There's a version of it in my office here behind me.
I see that. That looks like the color of my first house in Shoreline, Washington. It was seafoam green with white trim. Yeah.
Oh, Shoreline.
Yep. Vinyl siding. Favorite food?
Anything pretty much. I mean, I love food. I do clearly love food, but I think if I was having a last meal, it would be, and you're gonna laugh at this, it would be the like pra peanut sauce Thai food. Yes,
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't. I love it. I could eat it all day long.
Favorite movie?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one, Shaun. We consume movies. I love movies. I think they're a great escape, and they make me think about a lot of different things. But uh, one of the and you're going to disagree, I'm sure, but one of my all-time favorites is there's a movie called Fried Green Tomatoes. And I don't know
Mm,
what it is about that, but I still watch it. I cry, I laugh, it makes me feel good inside. I just love
yeah.
that movie. I don't know why.
It's been a long time since I've seen it, but similar in like depth. I've always loved. I don't know if it's my number one favorite movie, but it's definitely in my top 5 is Terms of Endearment.
That's another one. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
The the acting, the cast, it's just it
Same.
shreds
Yeah.
you multiple times. Like,
Yeah. That'd
yeah,
be up
so
there. I'd
good,
say that could be easily tied with mine. Yeah, that's a good one.
so good. How about a favorite band or song?
Okay, so favorite band ever, and when I do the rare karaoke appearance, it is a song by formerly known as the Dixie Chicks, but the Chicks, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. You know why I
very
love them?
good.
I mean, I love them. I love their spirit and them and their music, but I think they're
Yeah.
incredibly talented. But in Dallas, I remember when they would play on the corner on the street down in the West End,
Wow.
and we would go down there, to stomp around and get into trouble and as youngsters. And I remember they'd be on the corner, and I'd just be like, oh, we'd stop and we'd throw money in their little guitar case and just listen to them and dance on the corner. It was so fun.
Very, very creative. I remember because growing up in church, I heard the song "I'll Fly Away" a million
Yes.
times, and when
Yeah.
they creatively put that into Sin Wagon, I was like, "That is so creative!" Like, just yeah, very, very creative artists. Love it.
That's another good
Um,
mashup, like you were talking about earlier, mashups when we,
I know,
yeah,
you're giving me
yeah,
some thoughts.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, all of the insights. Everyone listening and or watching the episode, don't forget, go connect with Rae on LinkedIn, follow her work there. You won't, you won't regret that. It's just good to have people in your circle and in your network that have lots of experience and that are already kind of wired and calibrated to be helpful. And this episode's been nothing but you sharing all of these examples of your accomplishments and things that you've done, but it's all in this package of the spirit of like, let's get better, let's improve, let's empower people, let's have a big tent, let's keep growing forward. All the things that you shared throughout this whole episode, it's just a testimony of why people would be foolish not to want to add you to part of their network. So
Thank
thanks
you.
again. I really appreciate the time. For the audience, well, guess what? Now you know what's going on with Rae Selvey.
Love it. Thanks. It's been fun. Thanks for having me, Shaun. It's been a joy.